Today I'm gonna show you how I took my smoker to a complete new level. As you know, I'm a huge fan of smoking meat. You've already seen me smoke quite a few things, including a dry-aged brisket that was the most juiciest thing I've ever seen in my life. And of course, we can't forget about baby back ribs. Those are the most common meat you always see. Today we're gonna do something completely different. I'm gonna smoke meats that are unexpected to be smoked. And by the end of this video, my goal is to find out which meats are the best ones to smoke. At the same time, trying to find out which ones are just a no-go. With all that being said, this is I smoked every meat. So let's do it. And we're starting out with a beautiful behemoth of a steak. That is mouth-watering and absolutely delicious. This is a 1.5 inches thick porterhouse steak, and as you can see, the marbling is incredible. We call it a porterhouse steak because of the size of the filet mignon. If it's a little one, then it's called a T-bone, but as you can see, this one is nice and thick. The first thing I like to do is to dry brine it, and that's just basically a fancy word which means put salt on it and let it rest on your refrigerator. And what that does is allows the salt to penetrate deeply into the meat, seasoning all the way through. So after putting on my refrigerator, the very next day, this is what it looks like. See the dark color? That's a sign that the salt penetrated deeply into the meat and everything is perfectly seasoned. My goal is to do what's called a reverse sear. That means I'm gonna smoke in very low temperature, and once it reaches 125 degrees Fahrenheit, it's time to take it off and put a beautiful sear. And for that, I'm gonna be using my wireless thermometer. And remember, we only added salt, so we gotta go in with the seasoning. So I threw in some black pepper and garlic powder. I'm a true believer that with a beautiful steak like this, you should not mask the flavor with anything else. Besides that, I'm also hoping that the smoker will add an incredible flavor. So I put my smoker at 250 degrees Fahrenheit, threw in my steak and let it reach an internal temperature of 125 degrees Fahrenheit. And once that happened, this is what it looks like. I'll tell you one thing, it is perfectly medium rare in the middle, but this crust needs some work. That's one of the disadvantages of the reverse sear, but we can fix that real quick. So I removed my thermometer, and to put a beautiful crust and additional flavor, I'm going to be using some thyme, garlic, and of course butter. To my luck, my smoker has a side burner, so on a cast iron I threw in a little bit of grapeseed oil and started the sear. You want to sear 1 minute per side. Once the 1 minute's up, just flip it, and that's exactly what you're looking for. As expected, the cast iron always does its job. To finish off the steak, I threw in a whole stick of butter, followed by garlic and of course thyme. Baste it until your butter becomes nice and brown and the whole steak is coated. Now you want to make sure you smother the steak with butter. And one thing to keep in mind is not to let your butter burn. If you do, the taste is going to be kind of bitter, and that's the last thing you want. This is a smoked porterhouse steak. As you can see, it's just mouth-watering. There's one thing that you guys cannot experience, and that is the smell. It is just wonderful. To carve it, I started by removing the New York strip side, followed by the filet mignon. And as I took my first slice, wow! Perfectly medium rare, exactly the way I like it. That is as juicy as it gets. But the important thing is, what is it gonna taste like? And as I took my first bite, oh, this is amazing. It is very smoky. The butter basting really did an amazing job, and it's beyond juicy. I mean, this steak is so good, I had a little crazy idea. Let me just get that brown butter and just smother it a little bit more. And take a look at this. Come on. That's just crazy. Juicy to the max, buttery, that is phenomenal. If you've never smoked a steak, do it. You will thank me later. Jumping on to the next one, I decided to smoke a pork tenderloin. And to say that it was juicy is a complete understatement. That is what they call heaven on earth. And here's how I smoked it. When you buy pork tenderloin, they usually come in pairs, and this one is no different. As you can see, the very top comes with a silver skin, and you definitely want to take that off. It's not a big deal, just grab a nice sharp knife and go to town. The only thing you gotta keep in mind is not to remove a lot of meat. Once I was done with the first one, I quickly jumped to the second. For the seasoning, I kept it pretty simple. I started with the master of all seasoning, which is salt, followed by Guga's rub. Now the interesting thing about Guga's rub is that you cannot purchase this one, but you can make it at home. I did a complete video about it, and you can see it in the description down below later on. You probably already have all the ingredients at home, but feel free to use any rub you like. You gotta make sure you season all sides, including the edges. Once I was done, every part was completely covered with the rub. To take the pork tenderloin to a new level, of course I'm gonna wrap it in bacon. So I laid them down on parchment paper and they were ready. And in case you are wondering, I'm using apple smoked bacon, and of course it's a thick cut. I laid both tenderloins right next to each other, keeping the thinner end from the opposite sides. That will give me a more symmetrical shape so that everything cooks evenly. Now here's where things went wrong. I started by using parchment paper, and that's just not a good idea because it does not allow me to make it tight. And if you want a nice beautiful shape, you gotta make it tight. So of course, after doing so many beef Wellington, one thing I've learned is to use clinch plastic. That does the job every single time. So learn from my mistakes. Forget about the parchment paper and always use clinch plastic. Now all there's left to do is to make it as tight as possible. And as you're doing that, it's gonna form air inside. And the trick is to poke all of the air gaps so that all of the air can come out. And once I was done, this is exactly what you're looking for, a nice tight log. Since the plastic now did its job, the easiest way to remove it is by cutting the ends. Then carefully place it on a cooling rack so that everything can stay in place. And the last advice I'm gonna give you is work slowly. You wanna keep that beautiful shape. Now all there's left to do is to put it in my smoker. And for that, I put it at 325 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm looking for an internal temperature of 145 degrees Fahrenheit. As it was smoking, I decided to make a very easy and simple basting sauce. And I started with strawberry jam, followed by Worcestershire sauce and Louisiana hot sauce. Now all there's left to do is to mix it well and your basting sauce is done. I will tell you one thing, don't be shy with this basting sauce. And keep in mind that it has sugar, so you should only be adding it towards the end. If you do it any earlier, the sugar will burn and it will taste bitter. Once I was done with the basting, I let it reach an internal temperature of 145. Once it was reached, this is what I got. A beautiful pork tenderloin smoked to perfection. I know it looks impressive and absolutely delicious, but the smell is what's really hitting me. I'll tell you one thing, my kids were playing video games on their room, and when they smelled it, they quickly came in. And I don't blame them, because as soon as I took my first slice, check that out. That is juicy to the max. It might be the definition of juiciness. Oh, come on. This is just not fair. And as I took my second slice, it's like a waterfall of juice. Even after it was rested over 10 minutes, we still got a lot of juice. But of course, the only thing that really matters is the taste. And as you can see, we got a nice smoke ring, which even penetrated the bacon. And as I took my first bite, that is amazing. That is just out of this world. Smoky flavor, extremely juicy, a little bit sweet and also spicy. Come on, this is just unfair. It's interesting because you feel the smoke throughout the whole thing. And to say that this is delicious is absolutely an understatement. I had to quickly stop recording because my kids were ready to eat. And let me tell you something, they ate all of it. Now I do love me some brisket, and I just love short rib, but this is none of them. And to my surprise is my new favorite thing. Most of you never had it, but if I really give you any recommendation today is to do this one. Just have an open mind, because the flavor is absolutely delicious. And this is what I'm talking about. I know what you're thinking, it does not look appetizing, and you are 100% right. But as you saw it in the beginning, we will make this incredible. If you are still wondering what it is, let me tell you, it's beef cheeks. Yes, the cheeks. But remember what you just saw previously. And let me show you how I do it. The first thing I like to do is to clean it up. You want to remove as much silver skin as possible. There's also some weird external fat which must be removed. And you want to do that because it already has plenty of intramuscular fat. So now it's really time to show your butcher skill and remove all of it. And by the time I was done, this is what it looks like. That is a lot better than what we started with. And that's great because you're going to have a lot of the trimmings left. But don't even think about throwing this away. It is perfect for making beef stock. So always freeze them, and whenever you're making beef stock, you know where to go. But now it's time to season. I started with salt, freshly ground black pepper, garlic powder, onion powder, and smoked paprika. As always, make sure you season both sides. Now beef cheek is a very tough cut of meat, and in order to make nice and tender, it needs time. So I set my smoker to 275 degrees Fahrenheit, and you want to smoke it like this for at least 4 hours. That should give you a nice smoky flavor. Once the time was done, I took them out of the smoker, and this is what I was left with. I just wish you could smell it. The smell of hickory wood is really coming through. As you can see, that red mahogany color is a sign that it got a wonderful smoke ring, and it also made a nice spark. But hey, we're not done yet. We're gonna take this to the next level, and for that I'm gonna be using what's called mirepoix. That's a combination of celery, carrots, and onions. The only thing to keep in mind is cut them all the same size. Since we're gonna be braising this for a very long time, I definitely recommend a disposable pan. So throw all your vegetables inside, followed by some garlic and tomato paste. Now we're doing all all of this because we're also going to be making a sauce. And as those flavors get to know each other, you're going to be left with a sauce that you will not forget. So into the mix I threw in Louisiana hot sauce, followed by Worcestershire sauce, and finished it off with beef stock. You want to make sure you put enough liquid until all of the vegetables are covered. That will allow enough time for the cheeks to braise, and once it's done, the sauce is just going to be an extra bonus. Now it's time to throw the cheeks back in and seal the pan. And when you're sealing it, make sure you make it as tight as possible. The last thing we need is for the liquid to escape. Throw it back into the smoker and let it cook all the way through. And what I mean by that is that when you poke it with a fork or anything else, it should feel like room temperature butter. Zero resistance. And once mine was like that, this is what they look like. Now I will tell you one thing. They are extremely soft, tender, and all the fat and collagen has completely melted. I mean, take a look at this. Come on. Check out that smoke ring. You know what? I wanted to just give it a taste by itself without any sauce. That is amazing. It's so good. There's not a lot of words. I know it takes a little bit of work, but it's worth it. And the fact that it's more affordable is just a plus. I mean, take a look at this. Come on. But wait a second. We gotta go in with the jus. And of course, all you have to do is to strain it and it's ready to go. Yes, you can use a thickener if you like, but I'm going all natural. And like I said to you before, don't be shy. Add as much of the sauce as you like. As I always say, the more sauce, the better. And as I tried it with the sauce, it just made everything 100 times better. If there's one thing out of this video that is a must, is this one. Especially if you never had it. Make this, friends. You will thank me later. The very next one is lamb. This is a domestic lamb, and usually it's easy to find two types. You have imported from New Zealand or Australia. But here's the most important thing to keep in mind. If you like your lamb a little gamey, go for the imported ones. But if you like a mild taste of lamb and also a better marbling, go with domestic. And as you know, I'm all about the domestic. To keep it easy to cook, I decided to split it in half. That will make things easier to sear, and it also allows me to show you different doneness, so you can choose whichever one is better for you. I like to score the fat, and by scoring it, it allows to render much easier. For the seasoning, I started with salt, freshly ground black pepper, onion powder, and smoked paprika. As always, make sure you season everything well, including the edges. And the first step of having an amazing lamb is to put a beautiful sear. There's no need to put any oil in the pan because the fat will easily melt. You want to sear the fat for about 2 minutes and 1 minute per side. I set my smoker to 250 degrees Fahrenheit and add my lamb. One of them I'm looking for an internal temperature of 135 degrees Fahrenheit. And the second one I'm going to show you what 160 will look like. That way you can cook lamb however you like at home. As it was smoking, I made a very simple basting sauce. So I started with a little bit of melted butter, followed by shallots, gochujang seasoning, which is a Korean spicy chili, garlic paste, fresh thyme, Dijon mustard, and for some acidity, cherry vinegar. Now all there's left to do is to mix it well and your basting sauce is ready. This will give an incredible flavor to your lamb, so make sure you apply it generously. But once 135 degrees Fahrenheit was reached, this is what I got. And as I took my first slice, wow. I mean, I respect everybody's opinion, but to me, that is the perfect doneness for lamb. You are looking at an internal temperature of 135 degrees Fahrenheit, and it is juicy to the max. But of course, the important thing is the taste. And check this out, everybody. Come on, that is amazing. I can't wait any longer. I gotta take the first bite. And as I did, oh, it's heavenly. Juicy, tender, a very mild flavor of smoke. Also, that basting developed an incredible complex flavor. This is a wonderful lamb. But hey, we still got one more left. This one was cooked to 160 degrees Fahrenheit internally. And as you can see, it's still juicy, but not even close to the other one. You gotta keep in mind, whenever you're smoking any meat, cook it to the preferred doneness that you like. Because in the end of the day, you're gonna be eating it, and you have to enjoy it. Don't let anyone else tell you otherwise. Cook it however you like it. And as you can see, this one is still juicy. And as I take my first bite, wow, I really like lamb. If you've never had rack of lamb, what are you waiting for? I can guarantee you will love it because it's absolutely delicious. Now let's move into chicken. And forget about dry chicken. No. We are making juicy chicken. Now I recommend getting a good chicken. Let me tell you something, not all chickens are the same. And this one is organic. I feel like it produces a much better flavor. The cool thing about this chicken that it already comes ready to go. As you can see, it's already spatchcocked and it makes life a lot easier. I'm gonna show you my trick to make juicy chicken. And yes, there's a trick. The first thing we need to do is to loosen the skin from the meat. Just work your fingers carefully not to rip any of the skin. But just in case you do rip it, it's not a big deal. As you can see, it's very easy to do and it's extremely effective. Because we're gonna be doing the same thing that we did with our steak. And that is to dry brine it. And you already know what that means. You want to carefully season everything with salt. This is way better than marinating your chicken. And forget about wet brine. It's just not as effective. Dry brine is always the way to go. But once I was done, you can clearly see that I was able to put all the skin back together. That is the real secret of a juicy chicken. Just like our steak, you want to put it on a cooling rack so that it can dry brine overnight. If you don't have the time, you want to let it dry brine for at least 4 hours. But it's always better overnight. The very next day, I took it out of the refrigerator and this is what it looks like. Not only the dry brine did its job, but we also got an additional bonus. And the skin got really dry. And you already know that the enemy of crispy skin is moisture. The drier it is, the crispier it will be in the end. And of course, you already know because you've seen my toaster oven video. And just in case you haven't, make sure you check it out later on. Now the only thing left to do is to add seasoning. And for that, I'm using Guga's Rub. But just keep in mind that Guga's Rub does not have a lot of salt. And I specifically made it for that reason, which is allowing you to control the salt so you can dry brine it. But after adding all the seasoning, it was ready for the smoker. The temperature was at 375 degrees Fahrenheit. Any lower than that, you won't get any crispy skin. And I'm shooting for an internal temperature of 155 because as my chicken rests, it will raise an additional 10 degrees, giving me a final internal temperature of 165. And that is exactly what the FDA recommends. And as it was resting, check it out. That is already making my mouth water. And once again, I wish you could smell it. The wonderful aroma of the smoke is really coming through on this chicken. I can't wait any longer. So I started by removing the thighs. And let me tell you something, it feels extremely tender. And as I sliced the breast, yes, check that out. That's what I'm talking about, everybody. Nice juicy chicken. But I can't wait any longer, so I went in for a bite. And as I took my first bite, yes, that's a good chicken. And of course, I gotta go in for the dark meat. Oh, forget it. It's just out of this world. Let me tell you something, guys. Smoke your chicken. You will thank me later. Now we move into shrimp. But of course, smoked shrimp. And these are the largest one I could find. They're what's called 8 to 12 per pound. And that's exactly what it means. Always look for the biggest shrimp you can find. The great thing is that they already came deveined and completely cleaned. I threw them into a bowl to get them seasoned. And to make sure my seasoning was thick, I started with a little bit of oil. Spread them around until every edge is coated. For the seasoning, I am using Guga's Rub. Yes, I know that rub is good on everything. And it's easy to make, remember that. One of the tips I'm going to give you is to put it in a nice cooling rack. That will allow you to put it in and out of the smoker with ease. And as you can see, they were perfectly seasoned. I set my smoker to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Threw them in there and let my smoker do its job. As it was smoking, I said, you know what? We gotta add some additional flavor. And a garlic butter is perfect for that. So after melting a little bit of butter, I threw in some garlic paste. Mix everything well and my basting garlic butter is ready. You wanna baste the shrimp like you mean it. And you wanna do this as fast as possible because shrimp cooks very fast. Don't be cheap with that garlic butter, everybody. You know butter and shrimp were made for each other. As I close the lid, I say, you know what? We gotta add even more flavor. So I made a really quick sauce. And this time I wanted a mature taste. So I went with a barbecue whiskey sauce. And it's pretty easy. Throw in a little bit of cocktail sauce, followed by your favorite barbecue sauce and your favorite whiskey. Mix everything well and your basting sauce is ready. Now all there's left to do is to add it to the shrimp as much as you want. And make sure to close the lid and let the sugars melt. Because by the time it's done, you're gonna have some beautiful shrimp. That, my friends, is smoked shrimp heaven. It's very interesting because even though they were smoked for no more than 15 minutes, you can really smell the smoke. But hey, like you already know, what really matters is the taste. And as I cut it and I take a look at it, oh, this is looking good. So I couldn't wait any longer and I went for my first bite. Yes. That's nice. And the whiskey flavor is really coming through. And these were so good, I say, you know what? Forget about utensils. And of course, we cannot forget about heart. Because you know, we just have to. Especially after the beef cheeks, how are we gonna know if this is not amazing? And yes, this is beef heart. And if there's one thing that I've learned is not to judge a book by its cover. So this is no different. As you can see, if I push the veins, there's still some blood inside. And that must be removed. I always recommend to never wash your meat. But with beef heart and chicken heart, you gotta wash it out. Now notice I'm not doing it directly on my sink. It's always better to only use one container for it. That way you can avoid cross-contamination. And once I was done, this is what it looks like. And I threw in a big amount of marinade. Talking about that, let me show you how I made it. I started with a good olive oil, followed by lime juice and a little bit of Dijon mustard. Mix everything together until everything emulsifies. Of course, you have to do it with a tiny whisk. Shout out to my brother Andrew from Benji with Babish. By the time I was done, this is exactly what you're looking for. To finish it off my marinade, I threw in a little bit of cherry vinegar, followed by dill, salt, and garlic powder. And all there's left to do is to mix it well and your marinade is done. You want to make sure you apply the marinade everywhere. The more the better, because of course we're talking about a heart. And when it comes to heart, more is always better. The next thing to do is to throw it into my smoker. I set it to 325 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm aiming for an internal temperature of 160 degrees Fahrenheit. And once that was reached, this is what it looks like. That is a smoked beef heart. And I can't wait to find out how it's gonna taste. So I quickly grabbed my knife and sliced it open, and this is what I got. Gotta be honest, I'm not quite sure about this one. Oof. This one I'm a little iffy, but hey, still got some juices on the board. And as I took my first bite, smoky, strong, very strong flavor. I know you're thinking that it must be bad, but it's really not. It's just a very strong flavor. It's not my favorite, but I do have an idea to make it incredible. But just to make sure, I went for a second bite. Nope, not that great. But I was determined to make it amazing. So I started by slicing everything in small cubes. Then in a cast iron skillet, I threw in a little bit of onions and cooked them until they had a little bit of color. Threw in the beef heart and sauté until everything was fully cooked. And as you can see, by the time I was done, that is looking way better. And as we all already know, everything tastes better in a taco. So I threw in my sauté smoked beef heart together with the caramelized onions, followed by chopped cilantro and a little bit of Mexican crema. And now you tell me, wouldn't you eat that? Come on, I can eat that every day. I mean, check this out. As I take my first bite, oh, that is amazing. It is absolutely phenomenal. It was so good I had to make a second taco. And you tell me if you're not gonna eat that. Leave a comment down below and let me know. That is all the meat I currently have in my house. I cooked everything, everybody. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you do enjoy it, make sure to give it a thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, be sure to subscribe for future videos. Remember, if you are interested in anything I use, everything is always on the description down below. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you guys on the next one. Stay safe, stay home, keep cooking. If you keep cooking, I will. See you guys on the next one. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.